We're live. Hi everyone. Welcome to Sapna Rise's 6th episode. I'm Natasha Doshi, and today we have two amazing people with us. We have Mr. Ravi Subramanian and Jigs Ashar. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session.
It's a pleasure being here, Natasha.
Absolutely. So tell us about the books. How are the books?
The two books in the Shortz series, Insomnia and A Brutal Hand, both co-written by Jigs and me, are very, very interesting thrillers, very different from the thrillers that I normally write. These are books which are short, 150, 160 page thrillers, which once you pick it up, you will not be able to put it down. So these are books you must pick up if you have 2 hours at a stretch or 3 hours at a stretch available for you. Maybe on a train ride, maybe on a bus journey, maybe on a, if you want to steal some hours from work or just before you go to sleep. So these are thrillers which pack in a punch. I call them thrillers on steroids. And I'm sure all the readers would love reading those two books. Those two books are placed right behind you. Right. Insomnia, the white one, and A Brutal Hand, which is the darker one, and now Jigs is holding them up. So Jigs, you want to add anything about those two books?
Yeah, thank you, Ravi. And just to add to what Ravi said, very, very fast-paced, quick reads. The IPL is going on now, so you could probably miss one innings, or in the time that you would take to watch one innings, you can actually finish one book. And also to add, these are the two opening books of a fantastic series that has been conceptualized by Ravi, along with Westland Publications, which is called Shortz, right? And the plans are, I'll let Ravi give the plans about Shortz, but yeah, these are the two opening books of that thriller series.
Jigs, interesting you talk about IPL, and well, for those who spent a lot of time watching today's Mumbai Indians versus Delhi Capitals match, well, had you picked up these two books, you would probably have had a lot more fun.
I'm sure.
Yeah, Natasha.
So, how did this idea actually come about?
Well, it's a long story, and it's very, when you look at Indian market and the Indian readers and what they read, and you look at the international market and what people in the developed economies and worldwide read, you'd find a huge difference. Okay. Indians largely read in English. I'm particularly talking about Indians largely read romance and mythology, and whereas the world over, crime thrillers are a huge genre. In fact, more people read crime internationally than any other genre. So, this set us thinking, and then it's a vicious circle. What typically happens is, because crime does not sell as much in India, you don't have publishers really taking up crime in a big way. Because publishers don't pick up crime in a big way, you don't have too many books in that genre coming out. Because publishers don't pick it up and not too many books coming out, there aren't too many writers also who kind of experiment in writing thrillers, and hence newer writers don't really get the visibility and the release that they need. So when I actually saw that, I felt that, look, maybe, most of the people, I rationalized to myself saying that maybe most of the people read romance and mythology because they're easier to read. Yeah. When you are 17, 18, 20, you pick up a romance novel and read it. You don't really need to be too much invested in the characters in the book, and it just flows. You skip a few pages, you don't miss much. Okay, I'm not saying anything negative about those two genres, but the point is they are easier to read. Whereas if you read a thriller of the kind that the key Indian thriller writers write, you need to be heavily invested because there are multiple plots going up. Anything can go wrong at any point in time. You miss 3 pages, the story would have turned. So you need to be constantly engaged, and that's an effort, right? So I thought maybe if you give readers simple thrillers which they can read very, very quickly, maybe in a couple of hours, maybe 2.5 hours, then they will start getting hooked on to the genre itself. And once they do that, once you get hooked on to thrillers, you can't let go, right? You just can't move away from thrillers to any other genre, whether you're a writer or whether you are a reader. And so I thought maybe this could be an opportunity where I, along with 5, 7, 8 new authors, bring out a series of simple thrillers, yet brilliantly written thrillers, and put it out in the market. Let readers discover it. Let readers read it and discover the joy of reading a thriller. And maybe over a period of time, they will actually evolve to writing a lot more complicated thrillers written by most of the thriller writers in this country. So that was the idea behind this, and thankfully I found support in Westland, and here we are with 2. There are another 10 such books planned.
Wow.
We have contracted with Westland for 12 thrillers under the Shortz banner, and hopefully by the end of it, India would have seen some 5 or 6, maybe more, new thriller writers who go on to actually write their own solo books, much more complicated books, and see the success which the world has given thriller writers at large.
Absolutely, sir. I'm hoping that.
Absolutely.
Both of you have been bankers. I mean, you've been in this banking industry for quite some time, and then you got into writing. I believe Jigs won a competition, and that's how you started writing. And Ravi sir has been writing on and off since quite some time. So how did this shift happen from banking to writing, or do you manage it parallelly? How does it work?
Jigs, you want to go first?
Sure. So, Natasha, yes, I have been a banker for more than 20 years now. And for me, the journey started quite, as not a coincidence, but was not really planned in that sense, right? So it was around 2017, middle of 2017, when I was, I had enrolled myself in a creative writing course, which was very close to my office. So in the evenings, part-time, I used to kind of learn writing. And around the same time, I was just going through the Times of India one day, and I saw this, the national level, the Write India contest, right, which was there in its second season. And if you know the format of Write India, every month there is a different author who's kind of the sponsor author, right, and the judge as well. And for that month, it was Sir Jeffrey Archer, who's, at least my and probably one of the favorites across the globe, right? And I was just thrilled to kind of see him, and I said, okay, I mean, just the possibility that if I could write something and maybe he will read it was exciting enough for me to submit an entry in that, right? So that's how I wrote my first short thriller. It was just 3,000 words, called The Weight is Killing. And, to my amazement, actually, at that time, I won that.
Wow.
And again, to my good fortune, Ravi read that short story.
Okay.
And we knew each other, because we were in the same organization for a bit. Okay. And he called me and he said, I'm just planning this series, Shortz, and I'm looking for a new thriller writer, and would you be interested? So I think, by good fortune, I think all this fell in place for me quite fortuitously. So and since then it's been around 2.5 years since both of us have collaborated on these 2 books. And a funny thing which I'll tell you is, because the book's released in September, right?
Yes.
A lot of people who I meet tell me that, oh, you made great use of the lockdown of the 3 months. And I said, it's not a 3-month journey, right? It took us 2 years from scratch, from the idea development to where the books are there. So that's how.
That was actually one of my questions.
No, it takes much longer than that, I assure you. And yeah, so that's how all this started for me.
I know Jigs for what 10 years now, actually 15 years now. And I worked with him for 5 years, about a decade back. And at that point in time, he used to be one of those quiet guys, who not more of his workstation, just do his work and be happy. Uh, it never crossed my mind that here lies in the next big thriller writer for India. And but as luck would have it, he wrote that story for Jeffrey Archer. He won that award, and then we met again, and then we started on this entire journey. I was at that point in time trying to talk to a few publishers on the concept of Shortz, and India is still not evolved in the co-writing space. So publishers were very wary about it. Publishers are not too. There are some publishers who were not too keen about it. Some tried to talk me out of it, but uh, but I wanted to do it. So essentially, this is something which was a kind of a dream for me to get this out. And in the process, if I could do some good to 5-6 new thriller writers and maybe to the thriller community at large, then yeah, why not? So it was great fun. And as far as banking and writing is concerned, well, look, I have not given up my banking yet. So I still work full time, and I write during the free time that I get. Uh, it's not much of an ask. It doesn't take too long, and because I think it's not your writing and your ability to bring out stories is not proportional to the free time that you have. Had been so, I would have written 2 books during this lockdown period, but I wrote nothing in this lockdown period. So it's pretty much dependent on how active your mind is, how charged up you are, how much you can think and churn out stories. And that only happens if you are struggling at work, if you have a stress at work, which keeps your mind active and alive. So most of my books have been written, at the peak of the stress levels. So I think work or your day job has nothing to do with your writing efforts. Anybody who's got a day job, all you have to do is to prioritize a bit and maybe just make sure that you are more disciplined at work so that you can finish your work, come back home in time, and then do what you have to do.
Wow. What about you, Jigs? Are you working?
Yeah, of course. I am working as a consultant, which takes away more than half of my day. I am also actively involved with the startup in the fintech space. So yes, as Ravi rightly said, I think it's something that I'm passionate about, writing. So I do find the time to write over the weekends, and it's as Ravi said, when there is an idea you think of, and then there is a story that you are developing, right? And you are at a certain point in the story, and then you get this idea to take the story forward. It's like you just want to get back to your desk and start writing, right? So I think, yeah, it's been easy to co-manage everything thus far, and I'm sure it'll be, because Ravi has been doing it for almost 12-15 years, co-managing both wonderfully. So I'm hoping to do the same.
And Natasha, my advice to anybody who is writing today: do not give up your job for writing. If you can manage both writing and your job, do that, because writing, unless you are a super best-selling writer, does not pay you enough for a living. So in India, you can count the number of writers who can actually live off their writing on your fingertips. So do not give up your job ever. If you have any plans of writing, don't quit your job.
That's some really solid advice. So thank you so much for that. And I must say, both of you are such an inspiration because balancing your work, writing novels, especially you've written 2. So, and Sir has already been writing from so long. It's not an easy task, and you guys make it sound so easy. So I must say, this is really inspiring.
Thank you for that.
Actually, writing is the easy part. It's not difficult. What comes after writing is the more difficult part.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I'm realizing with my debut book.
You spoke about co-authoring the book. So how does co-authoring happen? How does it work? And how is your experience working with each other?
See, this particular book is a co-authoring with a little bit of a difference. And let me explain this to you a little bit more detail. Uh, when we started this project, the idea was very clearly my experience in the world of writing thrillers, my experience in my 12, 14 years with readers and in this industry, and Jignesh's writing skills. I think that's what was the combo. So when we met for the first time, and Jig said that he had these stories to write, uh, is when we started talking about, can you put this down on paper? At least can you put down the plot in 3-4 pages, so that then we can discuss, because this was meant to be short. This was meant to be about 25,000-30,000 words or 150 pages. So 3-4 pages synopsis of the storyline would be enough, at least to start off. So Jigs actually wrote down those 2, 3, 4 pages, and he had 3 plot lines. We met in my office. We discussed those plot lines. We debated as to what needs to be done, what could be changed, which character needs to be made stronger, etc., etc. And then we tweaked around. We tweaked on the story, got the storyline perfect, and then we came back. And then Jigs came back with the draft, and then we went over the draft together, and then we kind of chopped and kind of cut off a few sections, made a few sections faster, made a few characters stronger, and then eventually gave it enough structure and appeal so that it reads well. Must say that, I have read a lot of books, and for a minute forget the plot, for a minute forget Shortz, forget Insomnia, forget Brutal Hand. I can tell you that sitting here, that here's a special talent. Okay? And I will not say this just because I know him or he's co-authored this book, but I say this because when you read these 2 books, they read as true international thrillers. The difference between, say, my writing or an Ashwin Sanghi's writing or any of the other thrillers that you can pick up in India is, we write complicated stories. And because we write complicated stories, there are multiple plots. Because there are multiple plots, there are a huge number of characters in all these books. And because there are a huge number of characters, you need to really be seriously into the book and read it. Whereas, and so when you write those kind of stories, it's easy to keep the pace intact, because you can cut over from one story to the other, cut back, and then kind of keep the interest alive. But Jigs has done that with very, very few characters. There are 4 or 5, maybe 6 characters in each of these books. And with 6 characters, keeping the story intact, keeping the intrigue intact, keeping the pace, making you want to turn the page is an art. And I think that he did brilliantly. And so it was easy for me to work on the draft and edit it before we sent it to the publisher. But essentially, by and large, most of the writing effort in this book has been Jigs in that sense.
Thank you, Ravi, for that. But if I could add, Natasha, to what Ravi mentioned, it's been a couple of years of wonderful, these creative, collaborative sessions. Learned a lot, and when then Ravi would give an idea about, the character development. We especially spent a lot of time around the climax of Insomnia, right? And if you read the book, it is something which most of our readers are coming back with, that they were just completely hit by the way the climax, they didn't expect it at all, right? And so that was something which was really interesting, challenging as well. And it's been a real pleasure the last 2.5 years working with Ravi. So thank you, Ravi, once again.
Thank you, sir.
That's so sweet. In fact, I actually read both the books, and I couldn't stop until I completed the book. I couldn't put it down because it was so interesting, so intriguing. And I think the plots of both the books, at the end of it, I was just blown because that was so unexpected. So I think both of you, for the storyline and for the writing, that it keeps you glued until the very end. And the best part about both the books are they're short. So, when you're traveling or you have a short distance to cover, or there you have some time in your hand, you can actually pick it up and read it and finish it quick.
And
Thank you.
Natasha, the secret of whether a book has made an impact on readers or not is often seen in the reviews. Okay. And let me come to why. Typically, what happens is when a reader likes a book or is indifferent to a book, then he just reads it, finishes, dumps it, and goes away. Normally, when I do my solo books, or when these days when publishers bring out a lot of these big books, they tend to give out a lot of copies to bloggers, to people who kind of read it and share their views on the book, etc. And then you see the reviews cropping up on social media, on e-com sites, etc. Now, as far as Jigs books, Insomnia and A Brutal Hand are concerned, you know, it raised to 150 reviews of each of the book in no time. And I was completely blown away because I have, in my 14, 15 years, never seen the reviews raise so much ahead, unless somebody has actually given out copies, free copies to bloggers for actually reading and posting a review. And in this particular case, not a single copy was given. And there we had 150 plus reviews in no time, which essentially meant that both these books left some impact on the reader. And I think that's also something which is good, which had happened with these two books.
Some of the, just to add to what Ravi is saying, some of the interesting messages I get on Instagram and Facebook are where readers ask me about characters, right? And why did a certain character behave like this? So they really want to know, dig deeper, that I didn't. So I won't reveal much about what the actual questions are, but why did this person do this?
Yeah.
Can you please explain, right? And then you have to answer. And it feels good, that people are taking that interest to not only read, but
Absolutely.
and a lot of them, Ravi, are asking about if there is a sequel to the books coming up. So I'll just ask them to wait and watch.
But it does involve some amount of psychology, when you actually finish the book. It plays with your mind because that you don't expect the outcome of the book. So I would actually say it's a little bit of a crime, but psychological thriller also.
Yeah, particularly Insomnia is a bit of a psychological thriller. And I kind of tended to compare it with the other book called The Silent Patient, which came out, which was again a psychological thriller. So it's pretty much in that, and unintentionally the covers also kind of look similar in that sense.
So tell me about this new form of writing, because usually thriller novels are they're big, they're detailed, there's so many plots, there's so many characters, and uh, from whatever I've read, you have multiple characters, multiple chapters, and the characters kind of fade away in between and then they reappear towards the end of the book. So the writing style of thriller novels is usually very different from what you've adapted. So how is this writing form, how did it come?
See, 2002 or 2001, maybe it was, there was this movie called Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, right? 3.5 hour long. People went to the theaters, watched the movies, were very happy with the movie, right? It became a super hit. Last year, there was another movie with a brilliant star cast, 3 hours plus, and it flopped miserably.
Yeah.
So it went down the drain. Clearly, signs of changing tastes. People like shorter stuff. People like things which get over very fast. This is the day and age of T20 cricket. We're talking of T20 and T100 these days. Now, so things have really, really changed. Two, we are competing with OTTs and the visual media, right? There was a time when on metros you would actually find people reading books, right? These days, everybody is just into their phones watching something. Now, to me, that's sad, but that's a sad fact of life. And so, if you have to grab their attention, you can't be. You have to fight with them in that own space. So your books have to move like that, and that's the reason why I think shorter books will be the order of the day. This series is intended to be particularly short, but by and large, you would find that as we go along, books will become shorter reads, quicker reads, things which kind of cater to the significantly reduced span of attention of most people. And that's my take, and that's the reason why I think the shorter media will actually work well. But this particular series, as I told you earlier, the intent was clearly that people finish this in 2 hours, 1.5, 2.5 hours, at a very fast speed, or maybe 1.5 hours. But and then you kind of pine for more. So that was the idea of getting this series out in a short manner.
That's good to hear. When are you planning to launch your next series of books? I think that's one question that all of us want to ask after reading these two, because it's so gripping.
The second next lot of shorts should probably come out sometime in Q1, or maybe May of next year. One of them is ready, so the third book is ready. The fourth is work in progress. The fifth is currently also being written. So we're talking about May next year for 2 more books, and then maybe September for the one after that. The intent is to get out 3 books a year, or maybe 4 books a year if we can, but 3 for sure.
We're really looking forward to it. We
Thank
have
you very
one
much.
audience question, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Can I ask you an audience question?
Sure.
So Nigesh Shah writes, loved Ravi's Don't Tell the Governor. How much of research was done while writing this book, considering it revolved around the Indian government's demonetization?
Well, you read the newspapers every day. You don't need to do too much of research in any case, right? So if you've read Don't Tell the Governor, that book has everything which is contemporary. So there are stories from the world of finance, stories from the world of films, stories from the world of frauds. There are stories about cash, printing, counterfeit currency, terrorism. Those are stuff you read in the newspapers about. So all you need to have is a good memory to remember all of them, or else write them down so that you can go back and kind of refer to them later. But no, it didn't require too much of a research in that sense. And for me and Jignesh particularly, to write books in the world of finance won't require too much of a research, simply because we spent our lives in this world. So we can just pluck out stories from our memory and then put them into the books.
That's true.
So, Jignesh sir, you actually worked and then you enrolled yourself for a creative writing course, and that's how you started writing. So, can you tell our viewers how did that happen and how did the course benefit you? And obviously, can you share some tips for writing?
So to me, Natasha, writing is a good balance of art and science, right? So the art is when your imagination largely, right, and how you can think of stories and plots and all. And that I believe that everybody has at least one book in them, right? They just need an opportunity to put it on paper and get it published. So I was always interested, being an avid reader of thrillers, like Ravi's, all of his books I've read, Jeffrey Archer, Fawcett, Agatha Christie. So I've grown up on that, right? So I have always been fascinated by that, and I always wanted to write something. But what this course actually taught me is it opened my eyes that there's a lot of science to this as well, right? And it's not easy. So, for example, how do you develop a character? How do you write dialogues? And how can dialogues take a story forward? Because if it is too much of description, then probably the reader gets bored, right? So you have dialogues which take a story forward. What are plot points? What are conflicts, right? So all this kind of really helped me structure my thoughts together, and then that's how I started writing short stories. But I mean, a tip that I would like to give is, uh, just don't don't give up on writing. Just write anything, and that is what is also something that I learned, that every day, even if it's just 5-10 minutes, just write on something, right? And once you have a story in mind, so for example, for me, once I have a story in mind, I write down in brief chapters, right? And then I actually noted down that first chapter, this is what will happen in 2-3 lines.
Okay.
And then those 2-3 lines are further developed into the full chapter, right? So whatever, I mean, Ravi is, someone who will just open the laptop and start writing, right? And the stories will flow. So different styles, but I would say whatever your style may be, uh, continue writing and do put that pen on paper.
Uh, Most of what Jake said, I kind of agree, but a few things stem from, as you said, individual styles of writing. Uh, if you are a new writer, uh, actually, if you are a good, if you are, if you want to be a systematic writer, a methodical writer, then kind of noting down the plot lines, putting that down in chapter by chapter, exactly the way Jigs writes, is very, very useful, because it saves you a lot of time and effort in going and changing things at the back, rewriting things, etc. And it kind of prevents you from getting into a writer's block at some point in time when you suddenly wonder, how should I take the story forward. I struggle with my storylines quite a bit, so I kind of don't plot line the stories the way Jigs does, and I just start writing, and then the story kind of, I won't say the story flows, but I kind of take the story the way I want to. And then there are points in time when I get stuck and wonder, how should I go ahead? Is part A, is path A better, or path B better, or path C better? Then there are various discussions which happen internally in my mind. But having said that, I think on the creative writing bit, uh, Jeffrey Archer had once said that storytelling is an art, and good writing is education. So, again, here, there is no right or wrong, because a lot of people think very, very differently. And while Jig sees a lot of value in creative writing courses, I don't see value in creative writing courses.
Okay.
So that's why I say there's no right or wrong here. It's all about individual perspective and what you think is the right thing to do and what you think is the wrong thing to do. Because I think storytelling is something which nobody can teach you. Whereas where creative writing will help you is to put a structure behind that storytelling, and then put that out as a book, and or put that out as a story, put that out as something for people to read. And I think uh, if Jignesh's writing is an output of a creative writing course, then I think the creative writing course was 100% worth it. And but storytelling, I think the biggest thing people need to work on, and where they falter when they write a book, is the storytelling. I think if you are a good storyteller, your writing can be fixed. After you've put in the first draft, if you get a good editor to work on the draft, the writing and everything can be fixed. But no editor can actually fix a bad story. I think that's something which people must keep in mind. And if you are a writer starting off, the first thing you need to work on is not on writing. The first thing you need to work on is, how do I need to tell a story? The point which Jigs made, which is he actually wrote down chapters, wrote down plot lines, how the plot will actually progress from point A to point B. Those things are something which not everybody can do very effectively. And that's what needs to be worked on a lot more than anything else. I think Jigs, to that extent, is gifted because he's turned out to be a good storyteller. That's the reason why he kind of won the Jeffrey Archer story. He won the Shobha day storytelling contest. So he won all of those, which essentially means that that part of it is pretty much covered. Then comes the story writing. Then comes the writing bit, which also I believe he still had it, but he went ahead and fine-tuned that with his with the creative writing courses. And I think hats off to him. Being modest is always a good trait in this business.
Thank you, Ravi. You are too kind as always.
Some really insightful and valuable tips from both of you. Thank you so much for that. To everyone who's tuned in right now, we're in conversation with Mr. Ravi Subramanian and Jigs Ashar. These are the books Insomnia and A Brutal Hand. Shortz is the concept that they've come up with by writing thriller stories in a very short novel. And you can buy this from any of the Sapna Book House outlets. You can also buy it online at sapnaonline.com. And I just want to ask you one last question. This lockdown has been very, very beneficial to a lot of people. At the same time, it's hampered certain aspects of life. I'm sure you both had plans to launch the book, and this wasn't expected. As Jignesh sir said, you started writing this 2 years ago. So how has the lockdown impacted the launch of the book? Has it been beneficial in any way to reach a larger audience?
Jigs, you want to go first?
Sure. So certainly when we were writing the books, right, and we were finally looking at the cover design and the launch plans and all. This was something which just hit everyone out of the blue, right? So yes, initially early this year, when around March, April, when the launch was planned, we postponed it a bit, hoping that the situation will be normal. But then we realized that people are taking on to online and digital services quite well. And then we finally decided to go ahead with it, right? So in terms of, the number of people ordering it online or looking at a Kindle edition, etc., I personally think, and I'm a debut author, so I don't have that much experience, but I think it's been pretty good. And over the last 2-3 months, we are also seeing that footfalls in some of these stores, like the Sapna Book House, etc., are also increasing. So people are venturing out a little. They are going out, browsing, having a coffee and buying the book. So that has also started. So yeah, you do miss the physical excitement, because I have been in all of Ravi's book launches live in a big, so probably miss that, but maybe we'll save that for the next one.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with Jigs in the sense that launching it in a bookstore, traveling to Bangalore, for example, doing the book launch in Sapna would have been a Sapna, a dream come true. But not to be. And what we are doing now is the second best alternative, right? In that sense. But the second best alternative has its pitfalls and has negatives. And the negatives are largely that a new book gets discovered largely at the bookstores.
Yeah.
Online, people who know about the book go and look at it online. Nobody stumbles on a new book online. It's not that you are surfing, you're browsing something, and then suddenly come across, oh, this short series has been released, so let me buy it. No. If you know about Shortz, you would go online and buy it. So discovery of the new book, new titles is a bit of an issue. Okay. And two, what's also happening, and this is something which nobody's talking about, is the fact that everyone has gotten to online, right? Right from top to bottom, everyone is online. So there is a certain amount of reader fatigue setting in. How many live author interviews would you watch? How many live author talks would you attend? So somewhere, it's kind of become a norm. And these things keep happening. And then, I don't know how much of readers actually come on to these talk shows and these interviews and then pick up books from those particular authors, because there are a lot of them. Tonight, go on to Instagram Live, okay, and see. There'll at least be 10 people talking to 10 different authors on their respective Instagram shows. So it's becoming a bit of there is a certain amount of reader fatigue setting in, and hence people do not come on to these shows. So, and three, I think somewhere promoting these online has also become a lot more expensive. Can a normal author afford those? Possibly not. So it's challenging, but there's nothing better one can do. So you make the most of what is available right now. See, and that's why we are very, very thankful to Sapna Bookstore and Sapna Online for having organized this, because you are among those people who have a certain viewership, who have a certain audience, who have a certain reader base, a certain loyal customer base who keeps coming to your social media, coming to your stores, and hence, it was very important for both Jigs and me that we do this on time, and we are very, very grateful to you for having done the show with us.
Yes, I second that. Thank you, Natasha, and big thanks to Sapna Bookstore.
I think from all of us at Sapna Book House, we would like to thank you for coming online and giving our viewers such amazing tips and sharing your knowledge with us. It's definitely helping us. And from all of us, we wish you all the best for both of your books. And hopefully we'll do another session very soon to launch a couple of more books.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
All the best.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jigs. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.